Saturday Night Live, Growing Up Gen X, next on Retro Serial. Hey everyone, welcome to Retro Serial. I'm your host, Ian C. I'm glad you could be joining us for today's program. I really can't think of too many other things that are iconic in growing up Generation X than staying up late on Saturday night and watching Saturday Night Live. Me and Thrash Pondo Pons talk today about our favorite seasons, our favorite skits, our favorite actors, and our least favorite seasons, favorite skits, and favorite actors and actresses on SNL, and kind of the ups and downs of the series as it has moved through history. Before we get to that program, please do me the honor of liking this program, subscribing to the channel, share it on your favorite social media. Those three things are free to do and they mean the world to us. And make a comment. I want to hear about your favorite or least favorite actors and seasons and anything else generally you might want to say about Retro Serial. And one more thing, if you're interested in supporting us financially, well, there are links below to ways you can do that. And with all that out of the way, now to our program.
Well, hey everyone, I am not going to introduce again, as I always say, other than just to quickly introduce the idea that we are going to be talking about SNL, which is a subject that I've actually wanted to talk about for a long time. I feel like I say that a lot too. Like every subject is something I've wanted to talk about for a while, but it's really true. There really isn't too much more iconic about growing up Gen X than watching Saturday Night Live. And for me, personally speaking, it's more of like a coming of age thing. Like how old were you when you were old enough to stay up and watch it? And you know, and just, it was just more like a rite of passage, uh, more than anything else. And I really do think that we all like best the cast, which we'll talk about more here in a bit, that we like the cast and the crew and the performance of the one where we kind of came to age. Like what were we like in our teenage years or young adult years where we kind of discovered this show. But with you, Thrash, I know that we got to take it to an account a little bit of an age difference. You're 5 years older than me, is that right?
Yeah, I was born in '67.
Okay,
So,
all right.
so I actually remember the original cast, more or
Okay.
less. More or
How
less.
how old were you when the original cast came out? Do you know? Do you remember?
75 is when the first season aired, and so I would have been 8. I was too young to actually stay up and watch it myself. Actually, even on Saturday nights, but there was a local station in my area that started showing them actually in the afternoons.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, so I actually started watching them. They were a couple of years back. Chevy had already left, but
Okay.
all the rest of the originals were still on it. And so I remember I fell in love with the show almost from the get go. And of
Immediately.
course, yeah, exactly. And of course, even before I was watching it, we'd hear the sketches from older brothers, uncles, siblings, whatever, and like we do the whole Steve Martin too, wild and crazy guys. Even before we had seen a lot of the sketches, we were already quoting them. So it was really part of the culture, even for people who weren't watching it.
Yeah. The guy who was my best man at my wedding, he and I had a little bit of I don't know, a takeoff of two wild and crazy guys that we did. But like one of those things you think about because you watch Saturday Night Live and you're like, oh, I could do this. That'd be kind of geeky, and you think about skits that you do. But we had the sweater wearing buddies because I think we both we're like he lived with us for a little while, and like like we both walked out of the room and we were both wearing a sweater, and we thought that would be kind of funny. Like, we're the sweater wearing buddies, and like real kind of lame stuff. Like we would think we'd be into. It would be kind of a good sketch. I mean, it might be a little bit dated because things that were funnier back then don't really, aren't really as funny today. You have to be a little bit more edgy. Um, but we thought this through. One of these things that you kind of think about, then you never really execute. It's easier to execute now because you got cameras and everything. Back then, you'd have to buy a camera or something like that. But basically, it was more like we would be into like really like horribly geeky things, like wanting to go antique shopping and stuff, and like, so the sweater wearing buddies, what should we do today? I think maybe we should go to the antique store. Would you like to do that? Oh yes, I'd love to do that. And go to the antique store and pick up on like really old ladies and stuff. So these are just ideas that we had around, but it was really more of a repackaging of two wild and crazy guys, but but not wild and crazy, more like down to home, earthy, retard, or geeky. I shouldn't say that. Our word's not a good word anymore. That's a word. I used to be able to say that word, and I didn't mean anything bad by it.
It's one of those. They actually do a wonderful bit about that on Rick and Morty, where all these words that were meant with no ill intent, but just to illustrate a certain point of view, now you can't say them anymore. Right. So, and it's odd because not only do we not have suitable words to take their place, we don't even have points of reference. Yeah. So we're basically illiterate in our own culture in a lot of ways. Speaking of Saturday Night Live, I just want to digress for 1 minute. I was actually waiting for a first run SNL a couple weeks ago, and they do this thing now on the channel that I watch it on, where before they show the first run SNL, they show a repeat from earlier seasons, just sort of a nostalgia thing, right? And they ran this blur before, like, we'd like to apologize before we show this. This show was aired first when sensitivities were not as strong as they are today. Please do not be offended. And I go, oh, wow, they're showing something from the 80s when there was no holds barred. It was from 10 years ago. So much has changed in the last 10 years.
Yeah, things have changed really drastically in the last 10 years. It's really been bad in the last 10 years. You can't really say anything.
It's almost Orwellian.
Hurt. Yeah, well, it really is.
And the really sad thing is it used to be comedy was like the last bastion. Like, I understand, politicians should be sensitive about this and that, teachers, professionals, but comedians, they're trying to be funny, cut them some slack, but now it's like, yep, even comedians get no slack cut.
I know.
We're basically reinventing the wheel.
Comedians are the last people to give a crap, though. You know what I mean? They're the last people. They're a lot of them are very nonconformist when it comes to that, but the people who air the comedians are not. They've got to make sure all their T's are crossed and I's are dotted, so woke culture doesn't mess with them.
It just seems really odd because the whole thing kind of came full circle because a lot of these social concerns were brought to light by comedians having these sort of cutting-edge sketches where they made people stop and look at these things that just weren't right. And then years later, comedians are trying to keep the basically flags of dissent going, and all these people who they championed their causes of before are now pulling the plug on them. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So am I the only one who could see it?
No, I get it. It's that people are overly sensitive. It wasn't that we weren't sensitive. I mean, I was sensitive when for example, if somebody made fun of somebody who grew up without a dad, I mean, it hurt a little bit, but I didn't write letters or get, upset. It was just a joke, I mean, I understood it as a joke, and there's even, to a degree, I would even laugh at it. So yeah, it's just a different world we live in. Did you have you ever seen the very first Saturday Night Live?
The one where George Carlin hosts? Yes, I have.
That was going to be my second question. Who was the very first host of Saturday Night Live? George Carlin.
George Carlin. There was even talk of making him like a permanent host, sort of like what they did with Billy Crystal for a while, and that
Oh,
didn't pan out. But I do remember that first episode with George Carlin, and I thought he was so on his game that night.
th-
And
they
I do
made him. They made him They made Billy Crystal kind of a permanent host for a while.
Yes, was it 84, 85? There was one season he was a cast member, but he
Hmm.
was sort of like the impresario.
Yeah.
Um, Kind of like what Chevy Chase was in the beginning. You see, Chevy Chase was a cast member, but he was sort of the main cast member, and they've done that with other sketch comedy shows too. I don't know if you remember. There was one with Miss Julie Brown.
Oh, really?
Yes, and that was basically her role. It was a great show too. It was a little formula, but it had Jennifer Aniston and it had Wayne Knight and it had Tom Kenny, and it was a sketch comedy show. But she was sort of the centerpiece, and the rest sort of revolved around her. And
I don't remember this at all. I'm going to have to go look it up.
it only lasted one season,
Hmm.
and sadly, it replaced something I thought was a very. You probably don't remember this. It was called the Ben Stiller Show.
Oh yeah, I remember. I loved the Ben Stiller show.
When they canceled the
Loved
Ben
it.
Stiller show, yeah, when they canceled the Ben Stiller show, they replaced it with this sketch comedy show. And I've drawn a total blank, but
Yeah.
I'll look it up before the next time we go forward with this. But
Well, I remember too there was another show. Well, the other big iconic sketch comedy show besides Saturday Night Live was Kids in the Hall. I
oh,
mean, that's probably the next one that's as there's a few of them. You got Mad TV, of course, and then you've got
Second City,
Second City.
you had
What was
Friday
the
nights,
Oh, I didn't know that one. What was the one with Keenan Ivory Waynes and Jim Carrey was on it?
Living Color.
Living Color.
Living Color. That
That
was
was
sort
a
of
good one.
Fox's attempt. Yeah, it was excellent, and
That
they
was
were
excellent.
really trying to be cutting edge, and that was an excellent show in
But
its day.
they did on In Living Color. Keenan Ivory Waynes was kind of the host of that show. You know, he kind of
Exactly.
came out at the very
Mhm.
beginning, and at least if I'm recalling correctly,
Yes,
he came out at the yeah. Am I recalling it correctly?
you are. That's exactly how
Okay.
it worked.
Yeah, he came out at the beginning and stuff like that. But I remember in Saturday Night Live, they really went through an evolution during that first season. It was almost like it was a skit comedy show, but it also had like acts in it too. Like they would do like some of them like they would do like a comedian spot where somebody would get up and do stand up, and then a music spot and things like that. And the only thing that really lasted was the music spot. I mean, really.
Yeah,
Um,
the guest comedian was a big segment which went on for years. In fact, Joel Hodgkins, who was the original founder of MST3K, he got his start. He was an early form of a prop comic, and he
yeah,
would come out on stage, and you'd think he was like the janitor, and which is where I think he gets the shtick for that uniform. And he would have a gurney with him, and he had it all scripted, but he would seemingly pull random stuff out and just do a bit with it, and then throw it away and keep going, and that was his comic shtick. But I remember my friends and I used to watch it for that guest comic because a lot of up and coming comedians got their start there. But yes, it really was more of a variety show in its early
right.
incarnation, and you're very correct there.
And it just kind of more. I mean, it's it's like a lot of stuff. Even I look at my channel, things kind of fall off that don't really work. You have an idea for something, and at the beginning, it's you're trying to do it, but then you realize real quickly that things kind of fall off, and they fall off for various reasons. Either you don't think about it, or it just doesn't work, or whatever. You know, when I originally envisioned this show, I had ideas that I still would like to do, that lied beyond the arts and entertainment. That like the one that I did about growing up deaf, and there were a couple others that I did one about early. I did one about the art world, and then I did another one about the film industry of Gen X and stuff like that. These are very early ones, and I wanted to do one on drug abuse, and I even had ones on what else did I have one on like on like family relationships and stuff like that, because I had Dr. Brian McDonald from Brains on Games. He was on a couple times. He's going to come back one of these days
That'd
soon,
be great.
actually.
He's actually really cool.
Yeah,
He really is.
he is,
He
but
does
it
that
didn't.
together.
But and I still want to do those, but it really it turned into more of a um, uh, more of a arts and entertainment show. And I don't really know why. And what was interesting is it turned into more of an arts and entertainment show with even a heavy lean toward comedy. If you've noticed, like I don't like, I think we did cop shows once, but most of what we're doing is comedy, like sitcoms, and we're talking here about Saturday Night Live or whatever, and it just, I don't know if it was just personal interest and then I just don't think about it or something like that, but that's kind of how it went. I mean, we've done other stuff too, but I mean, I do have to admit that it went from this big thing down to arts and entertainment. And in arts and entertainment, I would say a good half of it is comedy. The other half is music and other non-comedic forms. So it's no surprise, I guess, it gets back to Saturday Night Live, which is the subject of our discussion. It is interesting that they went from this variety show almost to almost an exclusive sketch comedy show. All right, well, let me ask you this then: how old were you when you started staying up? What cast was it? What was going on?
It would have been the cast, I'd say. There was that, I want to say 79, 80, or 80, 81. There was that real bad one season, and I don't blame it on any of the members there. Gilbert Gottfried was part of that season. There were some other really talented comics that were in that one. They call it the lost season, where even when they do, when like, MeTV or TV Land were actually showing SNLs they would never show anything from this season, just because it was considered a washout. But it would have been right after that, because I remember hearing about this new up and coming comedian called
Eddie Murphy.
Uncanny. Yes, this young up and coming comedian called Eddie Murphy, and how you had to see this guy. You had to see him to believe him. You had to see him to understand him. And I remember I actually stayed up. I got to see this Eddie Murphy guy. Is he like the next Bill Crosby or Cosby or whichever? And I remember, and I can't even remember specifically what bits he was doing. But I just remember everything he did, whether it was like this sort of militant, urban, angry poet, which I think was the first thing I saw him as. That's the one, kill my landlord. Cile. Kill my landlord. I hate white people because they is white. And that type of thing. And then he would go to Gumby.
Yeah.
Or, and I'm just, whatever he did, he just put such panache into it.
Right.
And there were some others as well. I mean, Joe Piscopo was on at this time, Mary Gross, Brian Doyle Murray, who I think was actually a better fit in many ways than his brother for the show. And that's actually when I started watching. That would have probably been, call it my sophomore year in high school.
It was like 84?
I want to say 82, 83.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I would have been about 15, I want to say.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when I got hooked, and I watched it. And again, and that's the wonderful thing about Saturday Night Live is the number of incarnations it's gone through. It's actually hit, and I want to say rock bottom, that sounds mean, but it's actually tanked a few times and still bounced back.
Mm-hmm.
Not long after that, and the Billy Crystal year, that was the year, I'm sure you remember this, it was the one where they actually had, and it must have worked great on paper, but they had Robert Downey Jr.
and Anthony Michael Hall.
And even Damon Wayans, who was great, just didn't fit well, but he was great. And they tried to be really young, like too young. I think Anthony Michael Hall was still in his teens at this time.
Yeah.
And that season was, well, I'll just be nice, not very good.
No,
but
it wasn't.
it
It
rallied and
wasn't.
came back again.
I don't know why they went that direction with Anthony Michael Hall and Robert Downey Jr. That was odd to me because I saw them as actors. They of course they were like in 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, and I think the show that they were in, the movie that they were in together was Johnny Be Good, and that was when that first came
Yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
remember Johnny Be Good?
Johnny Be Good, yes, with a very, very young Uma Thurman.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it was right around, it was either after that and maybe they were trying to capitalize on the success of that because that was a pretty successful show. I mean, our movie, I really liked Johnny Be Good, quite honestly. And they had Judas Priest playing the theme song.
I
They did it.
completely forgot that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
It, the movie was funny. The movie, and I remember the movie because like they were best friends, but they would like really hit each other when they fought. And I was like, I don't know if I could do that, with a friend of mine. If somebody actually hits me in the jaw, I'm not gonna like that. I never really got into that too much. I mean, I would do martial arts, so if it was in a ring, that was fine. But just as joking around, like really hitting people, kind of a pre-Jackass era, I didn't like that aspect of it all. But it was a very popular film, and so I think it was then that they wanted to put them in. But even with the popularity of that film, I did not. I did not. I was blown away, even at a young age, and I think I may have been like 12 or something when they had that cast. I was like, I was not happy with it. I was just like this. I'm like, my Anthony Michael Hall, Robert Downey Jr. on Saturday Night Live. I don't think that's going to work. And well, lo and behold, it didn't
It
work.
didn't. And I believe both of them wanted to write, and they were both actually given the opportunity to write sketches. And again, the proof is in the pudding, as we say. Didn't really work.
Didn't work.
So,
But I do
but
remember
they bounced back from
the
that.
Eddie Murphy stuff, and I loved it. I loved it. And even though I was young, like you were saying, you were like 15, I was like 10. But of course, I had this. I mean, I really had this advanced sense of humor. I mean, it was one of those times, like early in my childhood, when I would stay up to watch Benny Hill, and my mom was working late at night, and we lived in this single complex that was a duplex, and the people next door to me looked out for me, but it was their own house, so it was kind of separate, but we were connected, and we were really good friends with these people. Um, but but it was a lot of my mom coming home late at night and me staying up and watching television, and I'd stay up and watch Benny Hill. And I thought, Benny Hill was hilarious. Of course, I probably didn't get all the jokes. At least I hope I didn't. But I had a very advanced sense of humor for being so young. And I remember at 10 years old, laughing hysterically at Delirious and laughing hysterically at the one that he had an album that came before. I forgot the name of it. But
Raw.
laughing. No, Raw was third. That was the third one.
Oh yes. Oh,
So
I had it. It's the one that had Boogie in Your Butt, and
yeah, and he stole the shoes. Remember that? He's like a guy's like, "Oh, are you okay, man?" It's like not in my neighborhood. He's like, "Oh, you okay? Well, you ain't gonna need these shoes, then, are you?" And he takes the, yeah. But I would laugh hysterically at that album, and so I mean, I loved Eddie
I had
Murphy.
that album. I can't remember the name of it to save my life, but I remember that album. Yes.
Yeah, and so him being on, I mean, that was just iconic stuff. Gumby, Mr. Robinson, that was just hilarious. Him in doing the um, him and Joe Piscopo doing Stevie Wonder and Joe, is it Joe Piscopo? Was that his name?
Yeah, Joe Piscopo was the guy on it.
He played who's that singer from the Rat Pack?
Frank Sinatra.
Frank Sinatra, and they
I
did.
got you under my
Yeah. Well, they did a parody of Stevie Wonder and Paul McCartney, Ebony and Ivory.
I don't recall that one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. You should look it up. It's hilarious. It says, it's like, I am black and you are white. And then Joe Piscopo goes like, I can see and you don't have sight. Or something like that. No, you're blind as a bat and I've got sight. And they did a parody of Ebony and Ivory, um, that was hilarious.
I think the funniest thing I saw the two of them in, it was supposed to be the Jerry Lewis School of Acting, and of course Eddie Murphy is doing the hey lady, and Joe Piscopo comes out in the very sort of lounge lizard, hey, it's just me, everybody, and the two of them play off each other, and it was one of the funniest things I think I'd ever seen because they both could do the Jerry Lewis impression to a T.
Oh, that's
And
good.
So,
That's a way to kind of both do your impression of somebody, say that there's a school of it, and come out and do it. Yeah, that was a bad year. I think though they redeemed themselves the next big cast change after that, and that's really when I started like loving the show, and that was the late '80s, early '90s. And that was the Dana Carvey era, the Kevin Nealon, and I forgot the females who were on there at the time. One of them went to go on to be on Third Rock from the Sun. But yeah, I mean that era right there. Mike Myers. I really think they kind of came into their own at that point.
Jen Hooks was in that group too, wasn't she?
Yeah, I believe she was.
She died a few years ago. Did you know that? It kept very low key. She had throat cancer.
Oh no,
And
really?
yeah, I was doing doing some research on Pee Wee Herman something. I forget what it was. Something that did involve her, and I'd read that she had passed on. And it was very
Oh
sad.
yeah. Oh, she did. Oh yeah, yeah. That's really sad to hear that. But yeah, yeah, they did the clang, clang, clang goes the
What the
trolley.
trolley? Yeah, yeah, that was her. That was her.
That was a good. That was. I can't say that was my favorite era. But it was probably my second favorite era. Really, that one with Eddie Murphy. Like the thing about that era that I liked was Eddie Murphy, and then of course Joe Piscopo was good, but of course Joe Piscopo was always better with Eddie Murphy. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So that was it. But when they started doing the Dana Carvey stuff, I mean Dana Carvey is just an amazing impressionist, and you know they were doing the whole Ray. George Bush.
Oh, his George Senior impression
Yeah,
is flawless.
yeah, it's really good. And then they did, yeah, that was some excellent stuff. And the Dukakis stuff. Who was that other guy that was on there?
Who
John
played
Lovett.
Dukakis? John Lovitz. John Lovitz
Yes.
played Dukakis, and he was. The two of them were together, and they were doing the presidential debate, and Jan Hooks was the moderator, and George W. Stay the course, stay the course. Okay, you still have a minute and a half left, Mr. President. Okay, I would just say again, stay the course, and he keeps going, and finally, they get to Dukakis, and Jan Hooks says, "Okay, Ken Dukakis," he goes, "I can't believe I'm losing to this guy."
Yeah, I know. It was just hilarious. And then the other who was the anal retentive chef? Remember him?
Yes, but I
Phil
can't
Hartman.
place it.
Phil Hartman.
Oh, of course. Well, I gotta say, Phil Hartman's death, and I remember saying this at the time, because Phil Hartman, of course, died very tragically. Phil Hartman's death left a hole in the American entertainment industry, which in some ways still hasn't been filled to this day. I mean, he was doing Saturday Night Live, and he was doing The Simpsons, and he was doing feature films. I mean, he was all over the place. He was even doing at the end, right before he died, he was doing documentaries. They were getting him to be host for documentaries on this pop culture reference or that.
Right.
I think the last one he did before he died was something on Christmas specials. But when he died, I'm like, oh my god, who can replace Phil Hartman? As it turned out, no one could.
No, he was on news radio too.
Again,
Sure.
another thing he was doing at the time, news radio. In
Yeah.
fact, he I think he left SNL to do news radio,
Yeah.
didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. I
And
think
they
so.
tried to bring in John Lovitz to sort of fill in the gap, and it just didn't work. Mr.
Oh,
Lovitz gave it the old college try,
I
but it
think
just didn't work.
Levitz was a contemporary, though. I think they were on at the same time because they
But
did.
he got more airtime to sort of fill in the gap. They
Oh,
tried because whenever a cast member leaves, you have two choices: you replace them or have other cast members sort of fill in
the
those
gap.
gaps. And they tried to have Lovitz fill in the gaps, and it just didn't work.
Well, one of
And yeah,
my favorite things was the John Levitz one, and that John Levitz was when he does the liar. Yeah, you see? No, we were at the mall. That's it, the mall.
and that was a throwaway skit. That was meant as a one and done. That was a I'm a spokesman for the Pathological Liars Association. In
Right.
fact, I'm the head of that organization. Yeah, and people fell in love with it, so it became this running joke.
Right.
But it was just meant to be this like one fake public service announcement, and
Yeah.
they ran with it. Yes, he was great on
Yeah.
SNL. Yes.
That's another. I mean, SNL was such part of my DNA that that was another one that me and a friend of mine at not like a long-term friend because I don't even know where this guy is anymore. But but we worked together at a grocery store, and we would do that all the time. He and I, we would be like, we'd like, I'd like go out and get carts. He's like, where were you? I was like, I was getting carts. As a matter of fact, I was the guy who invented the cart. Instead, we would just
Yeah,
do this
that's
this
it.
thing back and forth. I was like, yeah, I invented bread. But what was interesting about that is he went to the Marines, and I only saw him like maybe once or twice after the Marines, and I didn't know. I mean, I was maybe I think I was like 18, as I recall. I mean, about 18. I knew him like 17, 18. And he went to the Marines and came back from the Marines, and he was wearing casual stuff, and we were talking, and he's acting normal. And then one day he showed up for some reason in his Marine outfit, and he was no joking. Like he was serious in that Marine outfit. It was almost like a different person. And I just like, okay, you got your uniform on. You're not going to be apt to have some jokes, some humor. I get it. I get it. But that was another one. Those were great. The Michael Myers, the Sprockets,
And of course Wayne's World,
Wayne's
and
World.
it just classic. Mike Myers was phenomenal. With a couple of exceptions, his movie career I don't think ever quite captured his SNL performance. I love the first Austin Powers. The rest of them I could take a leave, but the first Austin Powers I think is one of the funniest movies
It's
of my
cutting edge.
generation.
It was cutting
It really
edge.
was, and it all just kind of came together. It's slam on pop culture. It's understanding of the subtle nuances of those old private eye films made it the perfect parody. It was a great movie. Unfortunately, they kind of the more they went, the weaker they got. But the first one I thought was great.
I thought it was good too. The only thing about the third one that I thought was pretty redeemable was when they did the Austin Powers movie at the end, and they had Tom Cruise playing
Oh,
Austin Powers, and I thought that was pretty good. Well, but what was I going to say? Oh, him and Dana Carvey kind of fell out of favor because of the Austin Powers movie. You know why?
I heard something about that, but no, I don't know why. Please enlighten me.
So so Dana Carvey used to do an impression of Lauren Michaels, and Lauren Michaels' impression, and so Doctor Evil, his Dr. Evil that he did is a ripoff of Dana Carvey's Lorne Michaels. So it's Mike Myers doing Dana Carvey doing that, and he didn't really give him any credit for it. He didn't say,
Okay.
and he didn't run it by him either. He
He
didn't
just
say,
took
"Hey,
it.
I'm gonna do this, Dr. Evil, and I kind of do it like you do Lorne Michaels. Is that okay?" And I guess um, I think, in all honesty, could he have run it by him? Yeah, he could have. But at the same time, like, you just think of things. You know what I mean? You don't necessarily think, "Oh, is this an exact duplication of this?" You know what I mean? It's just like your friends. You're sitting around talking. Your friend does Lorne Michaels impersonation, and you think, "Oh, that'd be funny for this," and you don't. I don't think it was purposeful. In other words, I don't think it was purposeful on Mike Myers' part. But I guess Dana Carvey got really upset that he was doing Dana Carvey doing Lorne Michaels, and they had a rocky relationship there for a while, a very rocky relationship for a little while. But they've patched things up since then, because it really wasn't intentional for him to. And I totally see that it could be unintentional for him to just say, "Oh, that's kind of funny," and just do it, and then not think, "Oh, well, I am kind of ripping that off, but I didn't really think about it." Um, but yeah, they did. Yeah, well, a lot of drama. We could talk SNL for a long time. Uh,
There was a lot of behind the scenes drama that we've only found out about since. One of my personal favorites, apparently, and I'm sure you already know this, but apparently when um, they were making Caddyshack, supposedly, actually, Chevy Chase and Murray, Bill Murray, absolutely despised each other. In fact, when Chevy Chase came back from because he left after the first season, he came back to do a guest spot or something, and Bill Murray said he was going to take a swing at him
oh, really?
because apparently there was some drama. Chevy Chase just sort of like left.
Mm.
It was over a woman, supposedly. At least that's the short story. And a lot of the cast members felt a little betrayed. Now, Bill Murray is a famous hothead. We found out even more about this in recent years. And he was also very young, and you get protective of your friends. And everybody talked about how much it had hurt when Chevy Chase left. So he kind of got like this protective streak. And he was going around telling people that he was going to. Of course, he also drank more back then too, or maybe
Yeah.
less the way he's going. But apparently, he is quoted as telling people that he was going to take a swing at Chevy when he
Right.
showed up. He didn't. But a lot of people were like, "Gee, what if he's actually going to take a swing at him?" They since reconciled while they were making Caddyshack,
Oh, well,
which
that's
is which
good.
is. But the first couple times they had to be in shot together, they were kind of like they had like there was no love loss.
Right.
But
Right.
then of
Well,
course they
both of those people are notoriously difficult to get along with. Chevy Chase is really hard to get along with. I don't know if you knew this or not, but he
oh
is
yeah.
very difficult. Like, people, when he got into, um, that sitcom that was really good, the one
Community.
Community. Yeah, people did not like him. They didn't like him. They didn't want to work with him, and then he gets agitated real easy and upset real easy. And then the other one where they did the Three Amigos, he had a hard time working with other people on the Three Amigos and working with the director and other actors and stuff like that.
Even
So
Martin Short, and Martin Short was no newcomer to Hollywood by this time. Martin Short was an established comedian, but
yeah,
apparently, I've heard that Chevy treated him as sort of with this real prima donna attitude, like
yeah. Like,
I'm
what
the
are you
star
doing?
and you're the subordinate. And Bill Murray, they recently pulled the plug on a movie just because of his behind the scenes shenanigans got so outrageous they couldn't even cope with it. They go, you know what, we're not making this film now.
Yeah.
And there's it's more and more that's coming out about it, so I don't want to talk too much about it until I know the whole story. But I
Okay.
guess it's not. I guess it's not good. I guess
Mm.
I guess Bill is even more difficult to work with than we thought he was.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the other, yeah. Well, now let's get into the cast. That's what was my favorite, and my favorite was the overlap between the new people who are coming up and that cast. When they were together, that original 88 cast of Dana Carvey and all the people we just mentioned, and then suddenly you get Adam Sandler, David Spade, Norm Macdonald. I think Norm Macdonald came in, and we forgot to mention Dennis Miller too was part of that Carvey cast generation, and Chris Farley. I thought that was the best right there. That was the best. And then the Dana Carvey started kind of dropping off intermittently one by one. That was my favorite era. Of course, then I wasn't a kid anymore. I was a young adult. And so that was kind of like, that was my era of it. If you want to know the pinnacle era, that was my era right there. Did you care much for that cast or no? Or
Well, I love them. Adam Sandler, I've been a fan of his since he was on Remote Control.
Yep.
Chris Farley is one of the great heavy casualties of American comedy.
Right.
He's one of the ones he should have gone farther.
Mm-hmm.
Had he lived, he may have gone farther. It's a very, very tragic story, but it's so funny because they're both gone now, but there's a wonderful sketch where it's a Chippendales dancer audition, and it's Patrick Swayze and Chris Farley, and you think it's a no-brainer,
Yeah.
but it's actually down to the wire because Chris Farley just puts his heart and soul into it, and there's this whole thing where Patrick Swayze's like, well, his body's terrible, but he's a better dancer than I am. And it's just this wonderful sketch, but it really talked about how, sadly, it was the perfect memorial for Chris Farley, because it's like, yes, he should have gone farther. And were it not for his self-destructive streak, he probably would have.
Yeah.
But like that the motivational speaker bit, that just never got old for me.
No.
And it should have, because it was the same joke for 11 and a half minutes, and then they would do it again and again and again. I'm like, why is this not getting old? And it's because he just put his heart and soul into it every time he did it.
I'm gonna say something controversial.
Oh, please.
Okay. I didn't love Chris Farley. Sorry.
Really?
I didn't love him.
Okay.
I didn't hate him. And I thought he was funny to do what he did, but I really got tired of Chris Farley fairly quickly. Beverly Hills Ninja. Now, I did like Black Sheep in there because David Spade and him together made it better. But Chris Farley would just, to me, it got old. Fat guy in a little coat. It was funny, but for me, it's funny for about a minute and a half. It's not funny. Now, I do have to admit that the whole skit of the motivational speaker is hilarious. I love that whole skit, and I love the Chippendales one as well. Of course, I love that one. That was just hilarious. But he just does fat guy dancing around, falling down. That's kind of, and it's just, to me, that it was just. Okay, I mean, it's good, but that's all there is. Now, I know that I'm in the minority. Everybody loves Chris Farley, and I don't hate him. Again, I don't hate him. He wasn't the strong suit I felt that everybody else thought he was, personally speaking. But that's how taste goes, right?
More than understand. I would like to speak to something that you did mention, that his movies were not quite as well received, and I'm going to throw a stone at Hollywood for that one, because unfortunately that's what the Hollywood cookie cutter does. When he was on SNL, and of course he was writing as much as he was acting, when he was on SNL, he basically could just do it his way. But of course, he wants feature films, so he's got to make a deal with make a deal with the devil. So what he does is he signs these contracts. These money men come in. They say, you're going to do it this way. You're going to do it that way. And I'm sure he was screaming at them, this isn't funny. Just take the handcuffs off and I'll be funny. We've heard stories like this going back to the time of Abbott and Costello and even before, where they're like, don't get in our way. Just let us do our shtick. That'll be funny. No, we're going to do it our way, and that's going to be funny. And it's not. And then, of course, who gets blamed? the comedian for not being very funny. And I think that's why his movies didn't work, and that's why his movie career didn't take off. It was the same thing with Dane Cook. Why do you think
Yeah.
Dane Cook left Hollywood? And we again, I could go on and on. We've heard the story 1,000 times, but if he had stayed doing sketch comedy or even become a stand-up comedian, I think he would be up there with Robin Williams, who again had some great movies, but the only movies of his that did well were the ones where he had free reign,
Yeah.
where he didn't have creative control. Those movies weren't as good.
I just met, you want to hear something interesting? Is I just met a guy who was in Jumanji.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. As he works at a motorcycle place here in town. And anyway,
The one with Robin
I
Williams you're referring to.
yeah, yeah.
Wow, no
He
kidding.
played a biker. He
No
played that
kidding.
big husky biker. He got a shot of him. I don't know if you remember that part or not. It's in
Vaguely.
Jumanji,
I
but
haven't seen the movie.
he's a big, huge, strong biker guy,
Check.
and I mean, just roided out. The guy still is like he's built. He's kind of a shorter guy, but he is, man. The guy's like pure muscle.
Okay.
And he was just like, "Oh, I was in Jumanji," and I was like, "Oh, you were?" He's like, "Yeah." He goes here, and he pulls up the picture and stuff of himself in Jumanji. And it's like, "Oh, yeah, that is you." So it was really cool that I got to meet
Cool
a guy.
squared.
Yeah.
That is cool.
But anyway, back to the
Sorry.
cast. So I think Adam Sandler was really the glue that his career kind of went everywhere. But honestly, in my opinion, the unsung hero was David Spade. I love David Spade. I mean, everybody knows I was a huge fan. I love his little sarcastic remarks. I love his stand up. I loved his Hollywood Minute that he did. It's his Hollywood Minute where he would, something would come up and then he just make this riff off of it. I just find that hilarious. And I know that you talk about every time David Spade talks, he has to address this whole controversy with Eddie Murphy because that's what everybody wants to talk about. But Eddie Murphy had just made two bad movies, and he showed a picture of Eddie Murphy up there, and he says, "Oh look, a falling." He goes, "Oh look, a falling star," and
And it's Eddie Murphy's career.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
and anyway, Eddie Murphy called him and threatened him, and he was like, and Chris Rock tried to step in for him and stuff, and it wasn't Chris Rock, another one off of that cast right there, and actually, well, next generation, Tim Meadows. I thought Tim Meadows did a really good job as well with the Ladies Man. Remember him? The ladies
Oh
with
yes. Yes.
the ladies man. I thought that was hilarious. Um, I don't know who else, but what
Well,
a
once you
but
say David Spade, and he still does those commercials, which I think are great. But he has what is possibly the most impeccable sense of timing.
yeah,
That whole because he pauses with, "Whoa, wait, time
yeah,
out, me not going there," thing,
yeah,
and it just for some reason I'm like captivated and it's hysterical, and all he's doing is pausing intermittently
yeah.
with a very you know mundane statement. It's just the way he punctuates it.
It's the way he just tells these stories like about his dad showing up every 3 years to give him a present, and he's like, a Nerf football, two colors. You spoil me.
No, if you would
And
if you just say that, it would be funny. Oh,
no,
great. Under football, two colors. It's like
yeah,
the way he punctuates. It's
yeah.
amazing. And I can't do it. I can't even impersonate him doing it. But every time
Right.
you refer to it, people know what you're talking about.
Right. And again, some of my comedy actually um, is more or less kind of a clean David Spade, to a degree. Maybe that's why I like it so much. I'm certainly not trying to imitate him in any way, shape, or form, but I have that. If you hang out with me, that's the kind of thing that I do. That I'll do that little sidebar humor. Like just the other day, so I was crawling under this house And this happened yesterday. It's a true story. I was crawling under this house to do
I
some
love it already.
wires. To do some, I was doing some wires. I'm pulling this wire through, and I'm crawling back through, and I'm just dropping tools like crazy out of my bag, and it's horrible work. And I get out there, and I don't realize it, but I realize later, oh, I don't have my screwdriver, and it's not my screwdriver, it's my boss's screwdriver. And he's like, "Where's your screwdriver?" I'm like, "It's at the hardware store. It's where it is." We're gonna go get it because I'm not crawling back under there. So little things like that, and I said it that way too because I'm like, because I didn't want to admit that I left it under there because he'd make me go get it. It's just like, "Where's the screwdriver?" I'm like, "At the hardware store." Anyway.
It's little things like that. Like, but this. Speaking of which, approaching 50 years ago, I remember I was playing at the beach. And I was playing with like some Star Wars toys because beaches they look like Tatooine, and on Cape Cod they have these things on pretty much most coastal areas. They're called jetties, where they're a strip of stones that are put together that are supposed to try to catch the sand as it washes away, so it doesn't go all the way to sea. And I had one of my figures between two rocks, and like literally the gap was like that, and it fell down 3-4 feet. And I ran over to my grandfather. I'm like, Grandpa Jim, my toy just fell down between those two rocks. And he very matter of factly went, and you know what? It's going to stay there too. And it was just the way he said it. And you know what? Almost 50 years ago, and still every time I think of that, you know what? It's going to stay there too.
Stay there,
I still laugh about it. And I lost a toy, and it's still funny for me.
Yeah, that's where it's gonna stay.
Yeah, it's going to stay there.
Yeah, I
So,
thought,
yeah.
and probably the most iconic thing he did was the bye bye. The bye bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Yeah, that was so like what happens at when you fly. I guess that's why it went over so well, is because that's exactly how you're treated. Um, True story. So I'm a David Spade fan. I follow David Spade. I've listened to both of his books. And apparently they use that skit for training at on I don't know if it's Southwest or something like that. As
Spirit, probably.
they, they use it. They say not to train you to do that, but to train you like what not to be perceived as. You don't want to be perceived as this. This is what we're trying to avoid. So apparently they use that skit in real life to train flight attendants.
That is too funny.
Yeah,
That is too funny.
that's good.
Well, there was another sketch. I remember it was during the first Gulf. There was CNN always had reporters going out, talking to generals, and they had Kevin Nealon come out as a general, and they go, "Now we would just like to. You can ask him questions, but don't ask anything of a military sensitive nature." And of course, every single question is like, "Could you tell me where our troops are hidden? Can you tell me how Saddam Hussein has worked best at undermining our morale?" Kevin Neal is just stone faced going, "Yeah, that falls under one of the things that I'm not permitted to say." And it goes on for like 11 and a half minutes. And not only did I think it was hysterical, because it's exactly what those press conferences look like. Apparently, the Pentagon, it went over so well, the Pentagon asked for a copy so they could show it during one of their like downtimes. Like, people got to see this.
Uh-huh.
And so it's funny how, yes, SNL sometimes does imitate life a little too closely.
Right. Kevin Nealon's another one of those people that, unfortunately, he had a good run on SNL, but his stand-up isn't quite as popular as other people's. And I don't know if you've listened to Kevin Nealon's stand-up. It's hilarious. He is phenomenal. But people don't, like when you start thinking about stand-up comedians, a lot of times people don't think of Kevin Nealon. And I loved, if you've ever listened, he's got 3 albums out, or 3 shows that he's done, and they're good. All 3 of them are like top tier, really good. But this brings us probably into our well, I don't know about our last segment, but unless we had something more to say about that cast there. The Dana Carvey, and then now and then remember when that cast took over, when it was then the Dana Carveys and the Dennis Millers and all that stuff started falling off eventually, and then eventually you had the Chris Rock, Adam Sandler, David Spade, Chris Farley, that era of cast. And the girls were really good. Oh no, well, the girls that I'm thinking of, because I think there was after that, then you started getting these people coming on board that were really good too, but it was significantly different. It took a little bit of a turn. This is when you started getting your Will Ferrell and I forgot the name of the. I'm going to look it up. I got to look it up here real quick. SNL cast of. We're going to go 1995. Let's just do cast of 1995. Yeah, Daryl Hammond, Sherry O'Terry, and Nancy Walls, and Chris Kattan, Colin Quinn. Yeah, Sherry O'Terry was good. I mean, I don't know if you liked her or not, but I thought she was hilarious. I thought, her.
Amazing energy, absolutely amazing
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah, that was a good cast there, and there was a good set of girls there on that cast. Sherry O'Terry, and then who was the girl that did Superstar? Superstar.
Oh, what was her name? Oh, I can't remember to save my life, but I know exactly what you're talking about. She was in the Jim Carrey The Grinch movie too, and did some other stuff, and I can't think of her name to save my life.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I thought Superstar got old for me the first time I saw it.
Molly Shannon.
When it ever became a running sketch, I'm like socially awkward kid being obnoxious. How is this funny?
I could see it. I can see that for sure. Yeah.
She actually reminded me of my best friend's kid sister.
Oh.
Did I say that out loud? Where she had no talent but thought she did, and you subject you to it every time you were dumb enough to be in the same room with her.
Right. Well, she did a little bit of the Chris Farley falling over kind of thing, jumping into chairs and things like that kind of. So it did get that one did get old. I have to admit, it did get old quick. I wasn't necessarily a fan of Superstar. I just think I think that out of all the seasons had the strongest female cast with Sherry O'Terry and Molly Shannon. And I think they had a really good cast, a really good strong female presence there. I think now they had good female presence earlier. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that. But I think that was the time when it was just as much about the females as it was about the males, and we were looking forward to the females as well. Remember where they did the NPR thing where they were?
Yes.
What's that? Yeah. That was a funny one. And they had Alec Baldwin on there. Was it Alec Baldwin that they had on there?
Well, he was on numerous times. He might be the most frequent guest host, I believe.
But they had sweaty balls.
Yes.
Remember that?
The Christmas
the
episode,
sweaty
yes.
Wiener and the sweaty balls. Because that was the name of his company, and they had him on that NPR show.
Oh yes.
Did you ever listen to NPR at all?
I have.
It is so boring. I'm sorry, any NPR fans out there? Those girls nailed it as to what NPR is like. It's just very monotone. Yes, I mean, there's no excitement whatsoever on it. But so what was some of your favorite skits of that era? Were you watching it by that era, or were you pretty much out of it?
I watched it from time to time. I remember I had a friend who was an SNL fanatic, so if I was over at his house, we watched it. I remember there were the cheerleader sketches were probably the most prolific of the recurring sketches, and of course, Molly Shannon, who he thought was hysterical. In fact, he thought there was something wrong with me that I didn't get it, and maybe there was. I don't know. It's a free country, but that was probably around the time I tuned out. Although there's one exception, and to be honest, thank God for YouTube. That's something I do to this day. There's one segment of SNL which, and we've touched upon it already, which from the very beginnings to this day is the part that I think is the best, and that is the Weekend Update.
Yeah,
I think to this with nowadays with Michael Che and Colin.
There was Colin Quinn who did it. Is he still doing it?
He was doing it for a while. No, it's a new Colin. It's a Colin.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
And all I can think of, unfortunately, all I can think of now is Colin Quinn. You're right. But Colin Jost. Mm-hmm. And the chemistry between the two of them are absolutely phenomenal. Plus, they've done something. Someone must have gotten my letters that those little spots they've used to break up the Weekend Update with those special reports generally bring it grinding to a halt because they've been getting really good lately. Some of them are equally funny to the actual spots themselves. The last few times I've watched it in its entirety, I've just been this is genius. And I really hope it continues because I don't know if you've watched SNL recently, but a lot of the regular cast members have left to do other things, and I wish them all the luck in the world. But I fear that SNL is once again going on 50 years now. Once it's reaching that point where it's going to have a crisis of cast. So many people have left, they're going to have to bring in so many replacements. And that's the point where it's always trickiest for them. Now, they've weathered the storm before on several occasions, and I wish them all the luck now because I think SNL is actually pretty solid right now. And hope it remains even with a rapidly modifying cast.
I pop in on it. I haven't popped in on it for a while, but I pop in on it every now and again, and I enjoy it. I do enjoy it. Especially the not Jenny McCarthy. Who was the girl on Mike and Molly? She hosted about was a few years ago now, but I thought she did a phenomenal job on there. She's hilarious. Every once and again I'll pop in, but really I started to your life gets taken in different directions, and I started to lose interest. So then you have the cast where it's the Will Ferrell surrounding cast, Norm Macdonald, that cast right there. They're the flagship. Chris Kattan to some degree, Jim Brewer. But then at that point, the new people that were coming on were Amy Poehler and Tina Fey. And who's the guy? Jimmy Fallon was coming on. And I didn't find it unfunny. I just started to lose interest. That's all I could say is I just started to lose. That's about when I started to lose interest. And then when you started to get to the point where you had Jimmy Fallon, Tina Fey and those guys as the main cast, and all the Will Ferrells had started dropping off at that point to where they're all gone, and you have that new cast. It's kind of interesting because the cast just kind of fade in and out. It's not like it's like a one and done changeover. It's like a few of them drop off, a few more come in, a few of them drop off, and a few more come in. That's about when I stopped losing in. I just didn't really watch it as much anymore. Every time I tuned in, I would laugh, but it just wasn't my cup of tea to say. I'm not a kid anymore. I can stay up late any night of the week. I can watch whatever I want to watch. And then now I'm an adult and I have a job. So anyway, that's when it dropped off for me. But it sounds like it dropped off one season earlier for you. It sounds like you dropped off at the Will Ferrell mark, basically.
I would watch it from time to time. Like, I loved Amy Poehler. She's from Massachusetts, like me. And she was in a sketch comedy show on Comedy Central called The Upright Citizens Brigade.
Oh, yeah.
Which
I remember the Upright Citizens Brigade. Didn't have Stephen Colbert in it?
It had a number of. I'm trying to remember. It had a number of people. Yeah. There were 4 primaries. Colbert may have had a recurring role in it because he was doing Stranger with Candy at the time.
Yes, he did Strangers with Candy. That's a trippy show. I love Strangers with Candy, man. That's a hilarious show right there.
It really
I
was. It really
I have
was.
the movie Strangers with Candy. That
Really
the
good.
girl, what's her name? I
Amy
don't even.
Sedarkus.
Yeah, she's hilarious. She is just one of the funniest. But yeah, that's one of those real bizarre, twisty shows that's just so surreal and so
That '90s cutting
backwards.
edge. It was like when things were really getting bizarre. You know what I'm saying?
Late night, yeah, very bizarre kind of thing, but it worked.
It did work.
Unlike some early '90s stuff that didn't work, like Batman Returns. So, just kidding.
I'll let Paul take it stride.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, oh, okay, all right. It's weird just to be weird, but no, Strangers with Candy was so funny. Um, anyway, I don't know. That's kind of where things fell off for me. I like Seth Meyers. I pop in from time to time. I saw him one episode where they were doing. Remember the Extreme Home Makeover show where they take somebody who had a bad house
Oh, I
and
remember the show. Yes, yeah.
yeah, on the show. And they did a parody of that, and he played tie pinning. And he has his shirt off all the time. And like, you want to put your shirt on? He's like, contractually, I'm not allowed to wear a shirt. Because Ty Penning was the carpenter on that show, and he was like always, I mean, just, one of those calendar boys, looked really good, 6 pack and everything. And
I know the type.
I know, I know. I'm working on it. I'm getting there. But anyway, I don't know what else. What else we got to say about SNL?
Just that. Do you know? And they didn't do it this year. They did it last year. And I really hope they bring it back. One of the funniest bits I've seen in recent years was actually on the weekend updates. And what would happen is they would write jokes for each other and have to read them, and that was their present to each other. And Michael Che would write the most hideous, racist, nastiest things and have Colin read them. And then it was so cute because he'd act really taken aback, like, "Oh, gee, Colin, that was pretty racist." When he actually wrote the material, you can actually get T-shirts nowadays that say, "Gee, Colin, that was pretty racist." In the spirit of it. So yeah, I hope they bring it back. I hope they bring it back because you can only do it so long, but I feel they could bring it back and do it longer. So
I don't feel like Saturday Night Live has really, like you're saying, like right now it's lost its stride, and I have no idea because I haven't watched it, but I feel like up to this point it really hasn't. It's just a matter of me being, carving out time for SNL. And it's not really like I carve out time for SNL these days. So if it doesn't stream, I normally don't, I'm normally not like, oh, it's Monday at 9, Dancing with the Stars is on. I got to go in front of the TV. I just don't have that in my life really that much anymore. Mostly everything's streaming. I watch something, it's on when I push the button. That's when it's on.
Do people even buy TV guides anymore? Because it doesn't matter.
I think TV Guide is out a bit. I mean, all you got to do is look up on your phone. I mean, like what's on right now if you want to know.
I'll watch it when I feel like it.
Yeah, yeah. They still have scheduled programming. They do. That's kind of interesting. I don't ever watch it, but they have it. But who wants a TV Guide? If you want to know when something's on, you just punch it in or whatever, or you just download it when you want to see it.
And the TV Guide was in its day the most widely purchased magazine in the country, if not the planet, but at least in this country.
Yeah.
It outsold Time.
Yeah, of course. Because not everybody likes Time, but everybody likes TV.
Television.
Yeah. Everybody watches TV. Everybody, even if you were like, I'm not a TV watcher, you watch TV. I remember I had this friend of mine who was a pastor, and they're like, oh, we don't watch TV. And this is back in the 80s. But they had a TV, and they watched it from time to time. I mean, it was occasional. It wasn't like every night in front of the television, but everybody watched TV. So yeah, TV Guide I could see being number one across the world. Maybe not so popular, in Guyana or something like that.
But they have a channel.
Yeah. Right. All right, Thrash. Well, what do you got going on at your channel next? I know,
Well,
but I know tonight you have a thing, but let's not mention because this isn't even going to come out for like 5 days. But you can mention here that you do a what every Thursday night? What do you do every Thursday night, my friend?
I have a super awesome retro live chat every Thursday night, generally at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I've also been having a lot of fun fulfilling friend of channel requests. Today I had my second installment of Top 10 Forgotten 80s Song Lyrics,
Oh
where I take
yeah.
all those wonderful 80s sing alongs that everybody thinks they know the words to and prove to you that you don't, giving 10 first questions and then the answers. And
Mm.
it's amazing. I even got a couple of them wrong.
Oh okay.
um, yeah. But
Like
plus, I've been doing.
Till Tuesday or something like that. Is that what you mean? Like misunderstood songs, like lyrics that are
Well,
misunderstood?
like for example, I don't know, in the song "Africa" by Toto,
Oh okay.
yeah, Kilimanjaro does what? And everyone knows the song, but nobody knows that Kilimanjaro rises like Olympus from the Serengeti.
I would have to sing the song to get it, but I might get it. I understand what you're saying. So like I know that till Tuesday they say hush hush, keep it down now, voices carry.
Mhm.
Is that what you're talking about? Like, because people mess that up all the time.
Yes, exactly.
They'll
Or
say hush hush, don't go downtown, it's too scary, or something like that.
or why does Corey Hart wear his sunglasses at night?
Oh, so I can't. Ah!
Watch you live and weave your storylines.
Ah, okay.
It's
All
fun.
right.
It's fun.
Yeah, that is fun. That is a lot of fun. And you're doing that on Thursdays?
I do it whenever I get around to it. It was a friend of channel request today. That's why I did it today. And I've been getting a lot of mileage out of my top 10 dad jokes,
Oh, those are the
the
best.
ever going series. And I still have time to do some vintage sci fi horror literature and film as well, which is what the whole channel started for to
Yeah.
begin with. And so I'll be bringing out more entertainment very, very, very soon.
Cool. Well, excellent, my friend. I'm getting back in the swing of things. By the time this comes out, the video that I just did will have already been out, so it's not going to be news. But it did the 5 things you'd know about facts of life, and they're going to continue to do that. I've been kicking around an idea. I'm really hoping if there are any people out there who want to pray for me, pray that I get this business loan in February, obviously, if it's God's will. But because I want to do some more videos that take more time to do and more time in the research department. Remember, um, I forgot her name, Richter, she did When Gen X Rolled the Multiplex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She did like 100 episodes of that, and she did a couple other things too, but she just did 100 episodes and was gone. And I would like to do 100 episodes of When Gen X Ruled Saturday Morning, and just take one cartoon and just kind of talk about it from for 10 minutes. Like what she did with Gen X Ruled the Multiplex, except for When Gen X Ruled Saturday Mornings, and just do like Super Friends and The Amazing Spider-Man and not just superhero ones, Qbert, all these things, all these maybe cut it off at 100, but it takes a little bit more. It's actually kind of easy to find 5 facts about the facts of life or 5 facts about this, and you just kind of weave through it. But to go, okay, who wrote it? Who are the writers? What were their most popular shows? And kind of summarize a whole thing in one takes a little bit more effort to do. And so if I get the business loan, I definitely want to do that. And of course, the podcasts are going to, I'll be doing more podcasts. I'll be doing more videos all around. So that's the hope that I'm going to do. But right now, I'm just getting back to the swing of it. After the holidays are over, coming back strong. We started immediately on a Monday night, last Monday night, and we're going to do next Monday night. And this is coming out, and I got a shorter video coming out. So hopefully, we'll get right back into the swing of where things were before I I haven't technically relocated. I'm just taking an extended vacation here, extended work vacation. So anyway, all right, everyone. Well, subscribe to Thrash Pondo's channel, and of course, I will leave his link in the description. And meet us here on Monday nights, and meet him on Thursday nights. And if you're a podcast listener only, I am so happy and elated you're listening. But just know there is more over on the YouTube channel. Just so you know, there's just more stuff over there to enjoy about growing up Gen X. And hopefully we'll talk to you again soon. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, donate, write a review, leave a rating, shoot this thing to the moon. Fly it to Mars, bring it back to the sun, and then come back to Earth. Okay, everyone, take care. We will talk to you all again very soon.
Peace.